Non nobis Domine, Domine, non nobis Domine, sed nomine tuo da gloria. Non nobis Domine, Domine, non nobis Domine, sed nomine tuo da gloria. Non nobis Domine, Domine, non nobis Domine, sed nomine tuo da gloria.
Non nobis, Domine, non nobis, not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to thy name be the glory. But is there glory here, or is there only unrelenting fields of sorrow? Hi, I'm Anna, and I love it when Nando V Movies puts up a new playlist because I get to look in detail at clever things in shows that I haven't thought about before, and I get the opportunity to throw a little bit of Shakespeare into the mix. So, my one musical scene that I want to share with you is from Kenneth Branagh's version of Shakespeare's play Henry V. This piece comes from very close to the end of the movie, and I think it does something extraordinary both with the emotional journey that accompanies the visual journey, but also some pretty clever technical things that go along with the blending of diegetic into seamlessly into non-diegetic sound that I don't think I've seen attempted anywhere else in this way. This was Kenneth Branagh's first feature film, and the music was written for him by Patrick Doyle. It was also his first big proper film score, and he's still writing music for Branagh all these years later. They were such a successful team in this instance. Branagh, when he got the opportunity to make a film, choosing to make Henry V seemed really baffling to many people, and the comparison that people had at this time was Laurence Olivier's film from the 1940s during the Second World War, which was really the glossy version. And Branagh came in and did something quite different. This is a war story, and there will always be war stories, but how we engage emotionally with those kinds of stories and what we take away from them depends so much on the emotional connections set up by how a piece is presented. So let's walk through how this extraordinary long tracking shot of the aftermath of a battle is more than enhanced by the score that is applied to it, but is actually transfigured by it. And the cue to the role the music is about to play in this next segment is in the script. In Shakespeare's play, King Henry says, "Let there be sung non nobis and Te Deum." So he actually says that there is to be a hymn sung as they go about their business of burying their dead.
Do we all holy rites, let there be sung non nobis and Te Deum.
Now, this particular hymn is it's very specific to the circumstances because the king has just said the victory is not ours, it belongs only to God, and that's what Nos Nobis, the Nos Nobis Domine hymn means. Not unto us the glory, O Lord, but only to you. And during the reckoning, the reckoning up of how many dead and how much loss there has been in this battle, there is no soundtrack here. It's just the diegetic, natural sounds of a group of actors. And that continued for about a minute after the king says, all right, we're going to go and do this, he disappears off camera, and you see everyone getting themselves together to go onto the battlefield and clean up the carnage. Everybody is exhausted, everybody is bloodied, everybody is muddy. There is relief here, but very little exhilaration. And then there is introduced the image of a single soldier. He has clearly been in the battle. He is bespattered with mud. He has no rank. He has no status. He is just an ordinary soldier. And soulless, he begins to sing this hymn. So at this point, it's an entirely diegetic piece of music. And it's in Latin. It is a modern composition, but it gestures towards the sounds we would expect of a medieval hymn. It sounds like something that would be reasonable for a soldier in that situation to sing. As the tracking shot continues, we see the king enter carrying the boy we have met earlier in the movie. So he picks up the body of this boy, who in fact was Christian Bale, and we see him carrying Christian Bale all the way across the hymn that began as a solo voice, where we can actually see the person who is singing, then expands to have other voices join. Now at this point, it could still be diegetic, it could still be soldiers joining in. Very gradually these voices are added until it becomes apparent that there is too much reverb and too much clean sound, too much clarity for this still to be a realistic piece of diegetic singing from the soldiers on the battlefield. We can tell that it is now an overlaid non-diegetic soundtrack of a choir, a choral piece, but it would be impossible really for us to tell when that switch happens. It fades seamlessly across. And as we continue, the music becomes more expansive as the camera pulls back and our view of the battlefield becomes more expansive. And we begin to see 100 tiny stories play out behind the frontispiece of the king moving from one side of the screen to the other carrying Christian Bale. Some of the people we see we know. Some we have seen play out pieces earlier in the film. Others are nameless. They are nobody that we are able to distinguish, and yet for each of them they have their own story. While this is happening, the sound is continually gradually building behind. We now have orchestra. We're hearing a counterpoint from violins initially, but then that fills out until we get more and more. And by the end of this long tracking shot, the music has swollen to fill the space with a massive choir and a full orchestra and horns. And it has built up to become something tremendously emotionally overwhelming. Branagh commented on this part of the film saying that he saw it as being an enormous march of shame, and I think the way the music here works for us as viewers is to capture that tension between words that talk about glory and visuals that show us only unbounding shame. As the king reaches the other end of the field, the French side, as the music climaxes, instead of the king claiming his victory by sitting in that makeshift throne, it is the body of the dead child who is placed there. The voices raised together at the end of this beautiful hymn show us not glory, but only the unity that can come with a massing of grief, and drawing us as an audience into that through the sublime orchestration, this swelling of voices and instruments together is what makes this a real piece of cinematic alchemy. Non nobis, Domine, non nobis, not to us, but to you, Lord, the glory. But in these united voices, there is no real glory, only the unity of grief. It just tears my heart out all over again, every time.